All right, so welcome back. You're watching The Breakfast on FUFA TV. My name is Mpologoma Victor Gracious Hines. Thank you for staying with us, and I hope that you're having a very good public holiday. Today is Eid al-Fitr, and I hope that you do enjoy times being spent with your fellow family members, but also your fellow Muslims, particularly for the Muslims. And if you're a Christian as well, I hope that you're enjoying the day off as you rest for work tomorrow. Now, today we're going to be talking about a very important topic. We're coming to the end of the 2022-23 financial year, and starting 1st July 2023, we'll be entering into the next financial year. Now, on Thursday, the 15th of June 2023, at Kololo Airstrip, the Minister for Finance, Honorable Matia Kasaija, came out and read to us the budget for the next financial year. Now, as FUFA TV and The Breakfast, our major interest was in the sports sector. How much has been earmarked for the sports sector? And we're able to get to know that just over 48.9 billion Ugandan shillings out of the 52.737 trillion Ugandan shillings for next financial year has been given to the sports sector. Is it going to be enough? Does it have value for the different sports federations within the country and for the sports sector? That is what we're going to be diving into. And I'm glad that this morning with me, I do have the program and policy advisor at the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, Mr. Jeff Gidagui Wadulo, joining the show. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you for having me. I'm surprised you pronounced my middle name very well. It takes a lot of challenge for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to be on
The Breakfast.
Yeah, FUFA TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I had to practice the middle name a couple of times to make sure that I do get it right.
It's very unique. Actually, it comes from my mother's side.
Okay.
And I'm Mugisu.
Mugisu.
Yeah.
Okay. We come from the same area. I come just a little bit before you. I'm Mugwere.
Ah, all right.
All right, Mr. Jeff Gidagui. Rather.
Gidagui.
It is a pleasure to have you here. And before I mentioned, as I was introducing you, you're at the Program and Policy Advisor at the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. Can you just tell us a little bit about the functions of the CSBAG?
Yeah, Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, or in short, CSBAG, is concerned about how government allocates the budget and how the ordinary person benefits from it. So we look at all sectors, especially the social sectors, and see how much money has been allocated to education, to health, to agriculture, social development, and others, and see whether that money has been allocated to those particular issues that concern the ordinary citizen. And if there are gaps, then we highlight them, and we flag them and write position papers to inform Parliament, which is the mandated institution for appropriating the budget. And then we monitor the approved budget and see whether the approved sums for those different social sectors are adhered to. Yeah, so we do that. Our work really is tied around the budget cycle. It's not just preparation of the budget, but also when it is being approved. But even after being approved, we also monitor service delivery and also hold accountable institutions that spend public money. So it's quite, our work is really cut out for us, and we are able to zoom in on particular sectors of interest and pick out perhaps what you would call the gaps and highlight them to government so that they can rectify them. Yeah, so it's an interesting job that we have.
Indeed, it's a very interesting zone right there, and you did talk about zooming into certain sectors of particular interest. And right here, we're going to be talking about the sports sector.
Right.
Now, obviously, just before we head into the next financial year, of course, we're going to be talking about the money that has been earmarked. But at the start of this financial year, 2022-23, the sports sector witnessed a record level of funds that were allocated to the sports sector. it jumped up greatly to 47 billion Ugandan shillings, which brought a lot of excitement to the sports fraternity. How, looking at, or coming into the financial year, how do you look at the performance of the sports sector, the institutions that have been spending this public funds in the sports sector? How has it performed as we come to the end of the 2022-23 financial year?
Yeah, you're right, Victor. There was an exponential leap from about 17 billion in the financial year 2021-22. When it came to 2022-23, we had that exponential leap of about 47 billion, and most of it actually, about 38 billion, was going to the different federations. So in our thinking, that was a leap in the right direction.
Okay.
However, there were complaints that there was no fair distribution of the monies between federations. I think FUFA took the lion's share of about 17 billion.
Yeah.
And the others were complaining about not just enough funding. Well, it was the best that had ever happened to them, because previously that was not the case. However, when you break it down, you also want to see how much is going to each of these federations. But apart from that, also look at the entire National Council of Sports budget. And then you realize, okay, that 38 billion went to the federations. But also the next highest payment, I think, is on wages. Okay. It's about 2.3 billion. And then we have, which is a good thing, identification of talent.
Okay.
I saw about 1.7 billion. I hope that, of course, when you break it down further, that doesn't go into administrative costs, and the actual identification of talent is not got. I saw they were doing so well on other things like administrative costs. I think travel, entire budget is about 400 million. Travel abroad, travel inland, not so much. Administrative costs. So you could see that in terms of overheads, there has been a fair management in terms of allocation, but also in terms of utilization. We're yet to see the audit report. The other thing is when you have a budget like that, you want to put your money where you are going to have the best return on investment. Now, I'm happy that we have now a new sports bill where sports is now being graduated from being just an entertainment to being a business.
Yeah, that's right.
And that our sports people are now have an opportunity now to be looked at as entrepreneurs, people who can actually participate in a particular sport and earn money from it, and not just have to seek to go out of the country. Sometimes you've seen our sports people, when they go abroad, they disappear.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't see any future in their particular sport in the country. Why? Because of the poor infrastructure, the poor pay for their talent, but also maybe a poor enabling environment for them to thrive. So I have high hopes that the new law, and I'm even happy when the president brought it back to Parliament, and which was passed yesterday. His issues were around the boards are too big, you know.
Yeah.
Have you seen, and I hope this is not the case for every federation, whenever there is a trip abroad where we have our sports people going to compete, compare the number of sports people and the team that accompanies them. There is a big concern, and so are we spending more on management of the sport, or rather having it doing its thing so that these people can operate in in an environment that can help them to nurture the sport. So when you look at the way the budget was allocated, the concern was around the unfair distribution to the federations. But perhaps also because some of the federations still have very low, raw talent that perhaps requires a lot of nurturing. Okay. But also because it was the first time we had this leap. And I'm happy that the same amount, I think they've added, about on the 1.5 billion on top of the current budget. I think we now have about 48.9.
Yes, we do.
But I think it's more targeted for the development of the Kacheka Stadium.
Okay.
One of the challenges of our sport in the country is around poor facilities.
The infrastructure.
Poor infrastructure. And so if we can put a little more, I'm happy, and I had the Minister of Sports, Minister of State, talking about the completion of our high altitude center. I hope that now, once it is done, we can now start using it as an international facility for training.
All right.
So improvements in different aspects of making this sport a viable event, a going concern that can attract international audiences who can travel here to see it.
All right. So you did express the appreciation of the government allocating more funds to the sports sector. And you did as well point out that there's been an additional fund to the sports budget for the next financial year by 1.5 billion as well. I mean, I just want to get a picture. I mean, what do you think led to the exponential leap in the funding for the sports sector? I mean, what do you think the government looked at that they weren't looking at before that led them to increase that budget by that amount? And some commentators thought that maybe this financial year they may reduce the budget yet again, but they saw that they actually increased it by 1.5 billion. So what do you think the government has seen within the sports sector to give them those funds?
I think one is around the lessons that we learned during COVID.
Okay.
Remember that sport is also a very, it's an activity that requires a lot of travel. A number of our sports people were stuck here. And you saw the kind of suffering that they went through. But even as a country, we were losing out on income from proceeds of their earnings. And as a country, we kind of had some kind of reset. Okay. But I think also from a political angle, I think the people who have been promoting sports in the country also found themselves in the House of Parliament. I think Mr. Magogo being in the House has added a lot of concern. He has been in charge and pushing. You've seen he was pushing the sports bill. Yeah. He has done a lot in terms of highlighting the need for financing for the sports activities in the country. So I would also like to add that to this new change of focus. Okay. But you can see that prior to COVID, actually the area got even a cut of about 7 billion. There was a shock. I think that was 2018, 19. There was about a reduction. Yes, before the COVID-19. The sector had about a cut of about 7 to 8 billion shillings. And then you wonder if, by the way, from 17 billion to 47, that's about 160% leap. You get? Yeah. So what does that tell you is that there is a new political will to support the sports sector. I hope that, of course, when there is a political will, it has also to go alongside the revamping of the systems in the sector so that the management of the resources that are available is done in an equitable manner, but also of course, issues of corruption, the leakages. Uganda is a victim for the entire, across all sectors. So we want to be concerned that this leap in the money, number one, will be retained in terms of the growth trajectory, because if you compare our investment in sports in the region, I think our neighbors, Kenya, they invest about 400 billion worth of Uganda shillings in sports every year. Now, you compare that to 40. That's, you know, it's that's about, that's a huge gap. I think South Africa also does invest about 200 billion worth of Uganda shillings in their sports sector every year. And what does that bring back? Of course, apart from nurturing talent, but also supporting the sportsmen and women, it also brings in more money. So it's really looking at it from the investment angle and believing that when we put more money, by the way, just like tourism, you put in a little more, you get much more. It would be very useful for Uganda to now reorganize sports in such a way that it's looked at as an international business that can bring in a lot of money, just like tourism, because there are people. For example, you just give yourself an opportunity to look at it from this perspective. You saw what happened for the last World Cup. All sorts of, you have 64 teams all out there. You have all the spending that is going to happen, the accommodation that is going to be required, the food, the transportation. So sports as a form of tourism. Look at what happened for South Africa, where they put in a lot of money and what they got to attract the World Cup. I don't know, are we at that point where we have put in a lot of investment for our infrastructure? Are we able? I'm happy we are bidding together with the members of the EAC for some sports to come here. I hope we can succeed. But we have to do a lot more in terms of cleaning up our infrastructure.
All right. Okay, Mr. Jeff, let's we're going to continue this particular conversation, and for the viewer right there, there's a lot that we need to get into, and he's preparing the grounds for what is coming up for the different sports federations and the sports sector as a whole as we come back after this commercial break. So don't switch your remote, we're going to be right back, and I'm here with the program and policy advisor of the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. I'm Pologoma Victor Gracious Hines, and you're still watching The Breakfast. And now we're here with a very important topic. We're heading into the next financial year, and the budget was read, and we're taking a little closer look at that budget and what's in it for the sports sector. 48.9 billion Ugandan shillings has been earmarked for that sector. And of course, I'm here with the economist, the program and policy advisor at the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group in Uganda, Mr. Jeff Gidaguyi Wadulo. So before we went for the commercial break, we were taking a much closer look at how the allocations were made for this financial year, but now we're going to take a look at the next financial year, 48.9 billion Ugandan shillings. And this brought excitement to a number of sports funds. And I was reading certain tabloids, and one particular tabloid said that there was relief amongst the sports funds, that there was an increment. Now, with this 2.5% increment, what value can the sports federations, the sports sector, be able to milk out of this particular budget?
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Actually, the budget for the council, the National Council of Sports, more or less remained the same like last year, like the year that's just ending, apart from the 1.5 billion shillings.
It was earmarked for infrastructure.
For infrastructure, which is a good thing. And I hope that a number of other structures within the country can be touched. Now, the challenge around this exponential rise of funding of about 38 billion shillings again for the federations, we hope this time round there can be more fair distribution across the federations, using the criteria of, in terms of the popularity of the sport, in terms of the numbers that are involved, but also in terms of the challenges that the sport has in getting it to international levels. I'm happy, and I'm here to look at the component on the identification and nurturing of talent.
Yeah.
The year just ending is about 1.7 billion. I hope that's the same amount, because this was more or less like a replica of the year just ending budget. Now, the federations can pick a lot in terms of identifying talent, which is, by the way, well spread. If you did just a little move away from the urban areas, there's a lot of raw talent that is out there just waiting to be nurtured. And I hope our scouts who are out there are able to do that, bring these young people into work camps that can enable them to identify themselves as people who can compete at national level, even if they're also doing competitions at the regional level. The other one is on spending on the sports person, because the source of demotivation for a number of our sports people is that even when they excel, they really don't see the value for the effort that they put in excelling in their particular sport. Is there a possibility? I saw some budget lines about, I think, where the National Council of Sports is supposed to be doing donations and so on. But we need to have an institutionalized compensation mechanism for our sportsmen and women in the country, so that it is not left to the whims of politicians, where a person who has excelled in athletics, for example, never mind that we get to learn about it when he has succeeded. Yeah. And then when they come up here, they are treated to a state banquet and all that. Maybe even the president donates to them a car. But it looks like it is something which is out of his own discretion. Yeah. I think it should be institutionalized, so that there are levels of compensation, standardization of performance, and the recognition of that by making a payment in recognition of the different sports people. That would encourage the sports people to strive to perform harder and not seek alternative environments to perfect their talent in order to be compensated better than their home countries. I think that in this budget, in terms of identification and nurturing of talent, there should be a lot that goes to the individual sports people so that they can be able to excel.
All right. So obviously, when you look at the funds that have been given to them, do you think that is enough for them to be able to go ahead and perhaps try to nurture the talent? Or do you think they need to as well find alternative sources of income to be able to enable them do exactly what you have said, and obviously increase value of the sports sector and talent within the country?
No, I think that once the country and government identifies sports as an enterprise that is capable of bringing in money, not just for the sports people that are involved, but for the country as a whole, not just in terms of tax, but also revenue that's non-tax that comes alongside it, if you look at sports as also a form of tourism. If we can put a little more in sports, this funding is exponential, but we need now to be concerned about where we're putting the money. I hope it is not so much into administrative costs. I looked at the budget that we are running. You could see that that has been controlled. But we also need to zoom in a little more. When you say nurturing and identifying and nurturing talent, what does it actually involve? Where is the spending being put? I hope that that 1.7 billion is again not going on to overheads within that particular vote spending, because it would still leave the sector, while it has a lot of money that has been added, it will still leave the sector and a number of federations still crying, especially if they're not getting the value for the money that they see has been increased in the budget.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, when you talk about talent and identification, I do believe the Federation of Uganda Football Association is doing a good job with the tournaments that we're having, for example, the FUFA TV Cup.
Yes.
I don't know if you've been able to watch the FUFA TV Cup.
Yes, I've watched part of it.
I think it's in line with exactly what you are talking about on the FUFA drum as well.
Right.
But with that being said as well, looking at, obviously we know the government, this is what they've been able to earmark and what they can be able to put in. But then during the budget speech, the finance minister did talk about the private sector credit, saying that there's been a jump from 19.5 trillion Ugandan shillings all the way to 20.5 trillion Ugandan shillings this year, from May last year to April 2023. How can the sports sector, also the federations, be able to tap into maybe say private sector credit and get investors from the private sector to come in? And do you think it's the right time for the private sector as well to invest in sports in the country at a much higher level?
I think there is an opportunity. Number one, that the government has realized that this is an area where they need to put in money. Now, how does an investment decision happen? Number one, the investor looks at, what is going to be their return on the investment? How long will it take? What is the enabling environment for the investment to take place? Is there actually potential? What is the kind of support market and or local audience, for that matter, for this particular investment to happen? Because the money has to flow. So the way I see, I think we're just beginning to realize it takes the heart of a long-term, medium to long-term investor to start seeing that potential right now. We're not yet there because, number one, I think we're still very poor about supporting our local sports as an audience. How many of us go to Nambole when the Uganda Cranes is playing?
I know a lot of people actually turn up for Nambole games.
Yes, we do, but how much as a proportion of those who are able to do so and actually pay in order to see the match? Number three, the challenge with international competition. Actually, you'll be very surprised, Victor. You shouldn't be surprised. International football is so popular to the extent that people of all walks of life, you find people high up in offices, people down the ghetto discussing fixtures of the European League, of the English Premier League. And he's very clear about who is going to be, who is going to be bought, who is moving from one team to another, how is Arsenal doing, how is Liverpool doing. But that same conversation cannot be extrapolated to the local sports. Do you see that, whether it's in social places? Do you see those heated conversations?
I think it's coming up.
About our local sport? Once that happens, then the fillers for investment start to emerge. And somebody says, well, if I can put money in developing football in Uganda, where is going to be my return on the investment? Okay. Where is going to be my source of capital? Because, and actually, capital or credit has become very expensive. So it is now a duty for us, just like the government has done for improving the environment for investment in the country. The kind of guarantees that they give, the kind of concessions that they give, if they can also do that for football, they should know that that is something that they'll be doing as an investment. And there's a very high return for the country. So if we put in 48 billion, let's not just think that we're just wasting our money, but we should also ensure that this 48 or so billion is going in areas where if talent is nurtured, identified and nurtured, and there's performance which can attract audiences, both local and international, then the transition will be almost complete of the sports activity being just for leisure and also into an enterprise.
All right. One interesting thing, obviously, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, the 3 East African countries, have come together. Their football federations have come together, and they have a dream of co-hosting the 2027 African Cup of Nations. They handed in the East Africa Committee Pamoja bid, and we're waiting for finalization. Now, as a country, I'm going to focus on Uganda as well. Infrastructure is very key, and there's a lot that needs to be done. Is it enough with just the funds that we're having, or do we need to increase the amount of money that we're currently getting in the sports sector to be able to revamp our infrastructure and set the right environment for the country to co-host a tournament of that nature? And also, if so, from the government's perspective, where can they get the sources of funds as well to be able to focus it on that particular aspect?
Yeah, I think number one is also to reprioritize. If you're investing for business, you need to find ways in which you spend more on areas that will bring you more money. And number one is infrastructure. I don't know, of course, our hope is that the current football pitches that we have, if you count Nambole, you count, I don't know the state in which the Mbale Stadium is, for example. Now the Kacheka one, which is going to be fast-tracked. I hope that as a region, we should be able to compete and succeed in hosting a number of matches. However, there have to be a lot of other things that go with it. Of course, we are very good with our security environment, but there's also the support infrastructure in terms of human resources and other, things like transport, the hotels that are going to host a number of people have to be to that international standard, because definitely the football administrators will be concerned when this finally is at its final decision making. A number of things have to happen. So as a country, we need not just be excited that we shall be hosting this international event. How prepared are we with all the other co-supporting sectors to be able to host an event like that? Otherwise, we might be in a situation where, our neighbors within the region taking advantage because of their readiness rather than as a country.
So should the authorities be excited about that prospect, and should they fast track?
Excited, but also with equivalent effort in preparedness, so that we don't go into circumstances. I think you saw the last one where our team had to host. Imagine you're the host country, but you have to play your match elsewhere in another country. Uganda can do better by putting its money where the most return on investment can be got.
All right, so obviously our time is fast spent, and we're going to talk about just one more thing, and obviously this is one thing that you talked about. You were talking about, as well as nurturing talent, one other thing as well having conversations was about the retirement benefit as well for the former football players, men and women. And you say that these are public servants as well. Give us just a little bit more of an insight into that particular issue, where the government should pay close attention to former athletes in the country.
I think they need to. If you look at the track record of all our former sports people who have excelled, and you follow them 5, 10 years down the road after they excelled, they're struggling. That means, again, as government, they have been handling it from a tokenism point of view, where they just, as soon as the sports person has excelled, they give them a little few tokens, but they are not interested in the life after excelling. And yet, these are people who will have served the country, they will have held the flag of the country so high, and you would want to compare them to some of the heroes that we have in the country in other sectors. I'm thinking that the new law should be able to provide some, like pension for these former sports people and men and women, so that they don't struggle. And it's also an embarrassment for the country. Why would you see a former footballer begging for alms on the streets of the country? How does that look? But also for their families. But also as an attraction for new talent. If they see where the former talent has ended up, do you think that new and upcoming talent can focus on being there for the country? I don't think so. Yeah. So I think we need to have our act together.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jeff. That's all we have time for. It's been a pleasure having you here. And I'm pretty sure that there are a number of things that we need to discuss still concerning the sports sector. And I'm pretty sure that we'll be having you on the show yet again. Yeah. Thank you very much. But we're going to put an end to the conversation right there. And I hope that you've been able to listen in and take away something. So with that being said, we're going to switch our focus and attention. Earlier on, Godson Ochira, my co-host, posed a teaser for each and every one of you. And we're going to get the answer to that teaser right at this time.